Hey, everybody. Welcome to Called Up the Prospects podcast. I am Chris Peters alongside Cam Robinson of Elite Prospects. You can see it on his hat, so you know where he works. I'm not wearing my Flo hat today. I'm wearing my Chicago White Sox hat, actually. I don't know if you heard, Cam, but we got a new Pope, and he's from Chicago, very similar to me.
Too hot for the hot
new
tub.
Pope.
Yeah,
I know. New Pope. So we are not going to talk about the conclave today. We're not going to talk about the new Pope, aside from what I just said. We are going to talk mock draft. That is right, folks. Cam Robinson of Elite Prospects, Chris Peters of FloHockey will go mano a mano, picking all 16 players for the first 16 picks of the NHL Draft Lottery teams. That is what we now know in terms of what the teams have actually gotten, where they're going to pick. And boy, were there some surprises. Before we get to that, want to remind you that Called Up the Prospects podcast is brought to you by our friends at Wonderful Pistachios. Get snacking, get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. We thank Wonderful Pistachios for their support. And you know what, Cam? This is going to be a 5 pistachio show on the 5 pistachio scale, 1 to 5, because everybody loves a mock draft. And the problem with that is that you get your hopes up and people like us will tell you who we think your team is going to pick, and then they pick somebody else, and then everybody gets really upset at the team or maybe at us. You never know. It can always happen. But we're going to have some fun today. And the reason we're going to have some fun is because the chaos of the NHL draft started on draft lottery night. The New York Islanders are going to pick number 1, moving up 9 spots. And on top of that, the Utah Hockey Club, now known as the Utah Mammoth, cool jerseys, I like them. We can get into that later. They moved up to number 4. So right now, if you are the Sharks and the Blackhawks, you're like, okay, we moved down a little bit. Not ideal, not what we wanted, but it's what we'll get. And then if you are the Utah Hockey Club and you are the incredible New York Islanders right now, you are feeling like, oh my, we have a lot more work to do all of a sudden, because there's going to be a lot more players that we have to talk about. So with that in mind, Cam and I are going to go back and forth. Cam is going to start us off with the number 1 pick of the New York Islanders. We're going to talk about those picks for the first little bit here. We're going to go back and forth, kind of maybe debate. And I do want to say the way that we are doing this is not what we would do. We are doing what we think the teams would do. So that is what we are, the mode. There will be a mock draft that we do in the future where it's what Cam and I think we would do in that situation. But that's not today. Today, we're going to try to give you a picture of what that top 16 is going to look like at this early stage. There's plenty more to go, but we are going to talk about it in depth. We are not going to do our regular segments today, like Beyond Belief or You Have to Pick One, because we are going to basically be doing that the whole show with all of these picks that we have flying. So, Cam, after my super long preamble, I feel like I haven't even let you talk yet, aside from saying hello to the fine people here of our audience. Cam, you are on the clock. You are the New York Islanders. You have the number 1 pick. Who do you take?
First, I'd just like to thank the city of Los Angeles for hosting us here.
No.
Yeah.
We're not doing that.
We're not even going to get that because they're not hosting anybody except for the media. They're not going to have us out there. And
Nobody
the players,
there.
I guess. Nobody's there. I'll be there. It will be great. I will say that we are experienced at this too, Chris, right? Like we've been doing this with Dim, with Dmitry Filipovich on the PDO cast for how many years you and I would get brought on together. So we have a nice rapport. Hey, we have a nice rapport when it comes to mock drafts. Now, yes, we are doing this on what we think the teams will do. But I'd just like to remind the audience, nothing goes as expected on draft day. Okay, so it would be so boring if we just rattled off our top 16 players in whatever order. Hey, things get a little spicy on draft day, and that's what makes it so special too. So, with the first overall pick, first time since 2009, I'm thinking John Tavares. Last time the Islanders had that pick.
Correct.
They're not taking Matthew Schaefer, and they're not taking the local boy James Hagens. They're taking Michael Misa. They're taking goal per game, exceptional status, 134-point Michael Misa from the Saginaw Spirit. They're taking him at 1. and he's heading to the Island. They're getting themselves that dynamic center. They haven't picked one of those in forever, and they're getting one right now with Michael Misa at the top, right out the gates. Spice.
So let's go. Let's get into it. So there's a lot of things here. As you mentioned, the Islanders have not picked number one since 2009. John Tavares was that pick. He obviously eventually left them. Happens to be a good Ontario boy. Michael Misa happens to be a good Ontario boy. So if you are a New York Islanders fan, you're feeling a little bit gun shy about drafting the Toronto boys or the Ontario boys, if you will. That could scare you. However, let's break it down a little bit further. And Cam, you talked about it. We got a guy that could be a potential number one center. We've got a guy that had 62 goals scored this season. You've got Cole Yzerman in the pipeline, so you've got a goal scorer there, but you're going to need a dynamic forward to potentially get there. It depends on, and really the other thing that we should note, New York does not yet have a general manager. So let's say some of the guys that have been rumored about for this team come in, and we don't know exactly how it's going to go. Like, there's been talk about them wanting to talk to Jeff Gorton. There's been talk about Ken Holland being in a president of hockey operations GM kind of hybrid role. There's a lot of things that could happen. So until that person is in place, it's going to be difficult to really predict this well. But let's put it the other way. The New York Islanders need everything. It's not just that they need, you could say, oh, they need defense. They need everything. They do not have a very deep prospect pipeline. They don't have very much in terms of just that high end in their pipeline outside of Cole Yzerman, who's still very much growing and may need a few more years before he's able to make an NHL contribution. So with all of that in mind, let's go a little bit further. Okay, why Misa over, let's say, Schaefer, and then also why Misa over James Hagens, the local favorite, who is starting to get a little bit of public groundswell on Long Island for his services on the island. So let's just start there. Let's go with that Misa Schaefer kind of debate in the you have to pick one kind of scenario here.
Okay, so in this setting, and everybody I've spoken to, I got a big executive and scout poll coming out soon here. Everybody says they've got Schaefer at 1, they've got Misa at 2, like to a man. Every team I've spoken to. Now I haven't spoken to all 32 teams, obviously, but in this situation, the Islanders, they're going to take a little bit of a safer route. Matthew Schaefer, missed most of this season. Obviously, he was great when he played, but it's difficult to draft a player like that at number 1. Especially because the likelihood of him stepping into the league next season, I'd say, is below 50%. Whereas Michael Misa, with the way he finished that year, the way he played in that back half, he's a sturdier build. He's a strong kid. He plays the middle of the ice. He is as close to NHL ready as anybody in this draft is. And like you said, he fills a role for them now. They do have Noah Dobson right now as their, premier point producer from the back end. Now, is he going to be long for the Island? Maybe not. Maybe he gets shipped to Utah. Maybe they get number 4 and they still get Jimmy Hagens at number 4 too. I'm just chaos factor. Anything is possible here. But the Misa Schaefer, they're going to go with the dynamic center who just offers a little bit more of a safety net at the top for a team that didn't have any aspirations, didn't think they'd be coming anywhere near this pick. They're going to get themselves a home run pick and they're going to walk away. It's all bonus money, right? It's all gravy for them at this point here. Now, they're not taking James Hagens, despite that swell from kind of the local fan base. And I get it. I put it out there right away. I tweeted it. James Hagens is from New York, from the island. He is a diehard Islanders fan. It makes a ton of sense, but you don't draft a player just because they're a fan of your team growing up. If this was 8 months ago, we'd be like, great. It all lined up. Hagens is supposed to go 1. He's an Islanders fan. Islanders got 1, but he's not supposed to go 1 anymore. His season this year, if they took James Hagens over Michael Misa or Matthew Schaefer, they would be leaving something on the table. They'd be leaving upside on the table. And you just can't do that when you're in the pole position. You can't do that in the lottery in general. Yes, you want to be like, we're going to keep him forever because he'll want to stay forever. But it's like, you whoever you draft, you have them until they're 27. You've got 9 years to convince them to stick around long-term. And if they don't, if they pull a JT and they take off and they sign with the Maple Leafs, well, maybe you learned your lesson and you trade them at the deadline before that actually happens. And you recoup some of that value. You don't just let them walk out the door for nothing. But if it does happen again, well, I mean, you take your lumps and you did have that player for 9 years. And in this world, can we really ask for too much more than that? Like, tomorrow's not guaranteed. We'll just take what we can get right now.
Yeah. And you know what? I think that's really fair. Here's what I'll say is I don't think that if the Islanders were to do something that would put them in a position to draft James Hagens, I do think that the most likely scenario, if that is something that they want to do, if it's something ownership wants them to do, if it's something that, then in that case, you would have to trade back. I think you trade back and you could say, all right, who wants Schaefer or Misa? That's basically, and there could be a number of teams that do that, and then say, here's where you talk to however many teams, whether it's Nashville or Utah or Chicago in particular. If you're going to draft a forward, then San Jose is just going to be like, all right, cool, man, do what you got to do.
Yeah.
We're going to take Matt Schaefer. It's all good. And so if it does come down to that, so I do think there's a possibility there, and I think that there's a little more to it. The thing about I've said this multiple times, and if you've heard me on other things, you'll get sick of it. But everybody wants to be the number one pick. Every single kid wants to be the number one pick. That's the whole dream. Not everybody wants to be a New York Islander. That's the situation. They are not a destination for free agents. They are not a place that has been able to retain some of their top talent. They are a place that I think has a lot of great tradition. The alumni base is so strong there, and it hasn't, it's been decades since that really has come to the fore. Ownership also has a fan base that can be very persnickety about certain things. I think that there is some, tribalism or whatever else you want to call it with the idea of James Hagens being a New York Islander, but is one of the easiest sells to your fan base, especially if you're able to recoup an additional pick. And I completely agree with you. If I'm the number one pick, I'm taking the players that I think are the best available. The question I have for you, Cam, in that regard, and this is, I don't really know if I have the answer. How big do you think the gap is between a Schaefer, a Misa, whoever else you want to put in that mix, and James Hagens?
It's not huge.
Right.
I think that James Hagens is going to be a very good player in the league. I think he could be a first line center. Now, is that going to be an average first line center? Maybe he's not big. He's not, dynamic with his skating. It's good. It's above average. It's good, but it's not a separating skill. Whereas Misa has some separating skills. I think his skating's better. I think his shot's better. I think his compete maybe is higher. Maybe Hagens has the edge in IQ. Maybe he does. Schaefer, it's hard to compare apples and oranges in that regard. But if you're asking me, like, it's as far as the center hierarchy goes, it's Michael Misa, and then it's James Hagens, right? And then now we're getting into Desnoyers and Brady Martin and Jake O'Brien and those guys, and Anton Frondell, I guess we would slip in that too, just to keep people happy. But yes, no, I don't think it's a huge fall off. So if the Islanders were to look at that and say, hey, yeah, let's slide back to Chicago's pick. Let's slide back to Utah's pick and pick up what? Because we don't see that often. We don't see someone move out of 1 to 4. And that the value there is probably significant in most draft classes, might not be as significant in this draft class. But let's say you get yourself an early second and a decent looking prospect. Well, that's going to help too, right? That's not right. Insignificant. And especially if you end up getting the player that you want and your downgrade is from like a top 10 center in the NHL to a top 15, 20 center in the NHL. I mean, it's not massive.
Yeah, so like that's the thing. I agree. I think the gap is smaller. We're not talking like Celebrini to Levshinov to Demidov, even and not that was a huge, like necessarily huge gap depending on which player you preferred in that regard, but it was bigger than the gap that we see this year. Bedard to the next player, much bigger than what we've seen this year. And so I would say if I am the New York Islanders general manager / president of hockey operations on day one, I am calling Chicago to seeing what the interest would be. I am calling Utah to see what the interest would be for two reasons. One, if I'm in that range, I know that I can still get James Hagens. And two, they both have assets that I would want in terms of young players that are getting close to NHL ready, players in multiple positions that could help you in the near future. And then if you have that plus James Hagens, that is a much easier sell both to your scouting staff and then to your fan base in case you are doing that little reach. So fascinating that we wouldn't have these discussions if the Islanders were not the team at number one. This is not like, I think that Schaefer and Misa have kind of drawn enough consensus to be the top two guys, but now you have this guy who came into the year as number one, didn't stay there. And the other thing is too, what happens if James Hagens rips 60 to 70 points next year at Boston College and is a Hobie Baker finalist, which I think is possible. Like
Not out of the
it's
question.
I think he's, with a year of experience, I see him really elevating. He's always been a high producer. So last year was a bit of an anomaly, I think, but it's fascinating to see. But that now puts me, we're going to put the Islanders aside and the insanity that could bring. And we're going to go, and this one I don't think was going to take much discussion. I wasn't sure which way. By the way, the one thing to let the audience know, we did not share with each other what the picks were going to be. We were going to let it happen as it may. That's the best way to do it this way. Does it mean that every single thing is going to be so researched? Maybe not, but like at the same time, we all have an idea of what these teams kind of need, what they kind of like, how they draft. So that it's educated in that way. You're not just getting us throwing stuff at the wall. I mean, which every mock draft sometimes at the end of the day is. But yeah, especially at this stage, we haven't even gotten to the combine yet. So anyway, I'm on the clock. The San Jose Sharks, since nobody's going to any podiums this year, they will force Gary Bettman to run to the podium for them and quickly say into the microphone, the San Jose Sharks are proud to select from the Erie Otters, Matthew Schaefer. And Matthew Schaefer is not a pick without risk. He has missed a lot of time this year. He is an incredible defenseman. He has size. He's physical. He can skate. He has good offensive capabilities. He defends well. Everything that you want in a potential number one defenseman, he brings. The key is we haven't seen him for a lot of the year. So when he was healthy, we saw him at an extremely high level. If he would have played the entire World Junior Championship the way that he was playing, he very likely is in the running for Directorate Award winner for best defenseman in the tournament, even though Cole Hudson had 1 billion points. There are a lot of things that could have happened differently for Matthew Schaefer, but we're all focused on the what if. The good news is for him is that his small sample is immaculate. The CHL NTDP Prospect Series typically was the best player on the ice, and that included Michael Misa and Caleb Desnoyers and a number of other players that would be high in this draft. So those are the things that I see. But Matthew Schaefer, for the San Jose Sharks in particular, you've got Sam Dickinson, who is a solid defense prospect, a great defense prospect. Matthew Schaefer is the guy that I could see being the number one if it's between those two guys, being the long-term number one. The other thing I love about Matthew Schaefer, high character player. He's been through a lot in his life. His mother passed away, his billet mother passed away. He's been through these injuries and illness and all these other things throughout his young career. And he has continued to meet adversity with only his best effort when he is playing and when he has been healthy. There's always risk when you take a player who's missed this much time, and especially one where it's a shoulder injury that requires surgery. Those are concerns that you have because those can potentially crop up later in a player's career. But if I'm the San Jose Sharks, I think that if Michael Misa is the number one pick, I make it very quickly known that I would like to take Matthew Schaefer and make that pick right away. Thoughts, my co-host?
It's just easy money, right? It's easy money. They wanted Schaefer. They want Schaefer. They would be picking him at 1. It makes way too much sense for them. He's going to be electric if that's how it works out with him, Celebrini and Smith. And you've still got William Eklund. You've got like the core pieces. You got Askarov now too. Like you've got and Sam Dickinson. You've got all these pieces, and Schaefer's just that one cherry on top, that number one defenseman. I honestly believe, and this is like, as I say this, everyone's gonna be like, well, why didn't you put him at 1 then for this mock draft? Is that he can be a guy who chews up 25 minutes a night, puts up 60 plus points, plays on your penalty kill, wins games for you, helps out a Stanley Cup contending team in all those roles, and potentially wins Norris trophies. Like, I honestly think he could be that level of player, winning Norris trophies as the best defenseman in the league. But you're right. Like you mentioned it too, is that the sample size has been small. Excellent at the U18s last year as an underager. Okay.
Yep.
Coming off a season where he didn't shine in Erie. Fine. The statistical profile wasn't great though. Then he goes to the Holinka. Good. Good, very good. Maybe not excellent, but very good. Then you said your top prospects, good. Back in Erie, very good. World Juniors for a minute, electric. And so it's like we're piecing all these puzzle pieces together to be like, this kid has the juice. And I do believe that he does. And so for San Jose, it's a perfect landing spot for him. And like, how great in the real world is this for San Jose? If they're going to lose and slide down to 2, the Islanders are like the best team to land there. There's only a couple teams that would have really facilitated them because they can sit. They can be like, okay, this is fine. We'll sit here. And there's a decent chance that someone's going to take the forward at 1 now. If it's the Islanders or if they move back, right? If they flip that to Chicago, we know Chicago's taking the forward and now they're sitting there still. And if they don't move it, they're going to be tempted to take the forward. And so that works out perfectly for San Jose.
It really does. And, I think the only discussion at this point, and we've talked about it a lot, is, so what happens if we only had the smallest sample of, some of these other players, like if James what happens if James Hagens missed the entire year and we're basing it off of, like, does he still go 1? Like, those are like the things, those are things you kind of have those discussions. And those are the discussions the scouts are going to have. They're going to turn over every rock in terms of what happens. Like for both Utah and New York, this changes the dynamic of their draft preparation in a significant way.
Massively.
And so now you have a lot more work to do in order to make this all go. But that one was easy. This one, especially now that Misa is off the board, becomes a little more difficult. So Cam Robinson, you are the Chicago Blackhawks. You are on the clock. You said it already. We know they're going forward. What forward are they taking, Mr. Robinson?
This one's quick. This one's quick and easy. Quick and easy. They're going up there and they're taking Porter Martone. Why not? They're going to get themselves some meat up front. They're a little small up front right now. Obviously, Bedard's not a big boy. Frankie Nazar's not big. They got Oliver Moore coming. Lucas Reichel's not big. Tuevo's not big. They don't have that meat up there. And Martone, he could be like Blake Wheeler at the end of the day, right? He's got the size, he's got the reach, he's a great playmaker, right? He's got some east-west lateral stuff going on when he's handling the puck. He can surf around, he can deke, he can finish, he goes to the net. We got to figure out a way to keep the lights on all the time with him. And they're gonna have to figure that out in Chicago on how to get him consistently engaged and fired up, because when he's a truck. And so if you can get that going, that spark lit all the time, then watch out. Like, I think he could push 80, 90 points, especially when you just say, okay, you're now linked at the hip to Connor Bedard. You go clear out space for him. You set him up for that wicked release. Okay. Playmaking winger with that big body. Go dig, go move the puck out to Connor, rip it back in the net. I think that could be a deadly combination. I know a lot of people are like, oh, if they're, maybe they're getting me set 3. Maybe they're taking a lot of buzz about Anton Frundell there. They don't need a middle 6 center. They need someone to get Bedard going. And at this spot, it's Porter Martone.
Yeah. So here's the thing, that the point you made about the lights not always being on all the time. That's the thing where does give me pause about Chicago in particular drafting Martone. They do need size. I would agree with that. I think that you want to get bigger up front. But let's also look at the players that they have drafted over the last couple of years. There's a pretty common trait among all of them, and it's that high drive, high motor compete. Among the forwards, which is kind of like in the D, and there's a clear type, I think, for them among the four. Like, because even Sasha Boisvert, who they took later in the first round last year, similar kind of thing. High level compete. Physical, you've got, and the other thing that I wonder about Martone, as it pertains to Chicago in particular, is pace of play, because they also have quite a bit of speed in that group. How do you feel how do you feel about the skating? And I'm not saying that you're wrong. I'm just saying, how do you feel about the skating as it pertains to the group they have? I mean, obviously, like, Oliver Moore is the outlier in terms of his speed and just incredible speed. But in terms of the guys like a Frankie Nazar, Connor's not exactly a burner himself, but those kinds of players. I mean, what aside from the size, what else do we have for him that kind of could move him into Chicago. And I agree. Like, I think a winger, a running mate for Bedard has to be the priority. And that's if Connor's going to be a long-term center, which I think he will be, but still it's kind of one of those things that is an open discussion still.
I don't think the skating's going to be an issue for him. I honestly don't. I don't. I think it's fine. I think it's powerful. And like, this is still a guy who put up nearly 100 points in like 55 games in the O. Like, he's a highly skilled player too. He's not Pat Maroon. We're not getting just for the size here to be like, go be a protector. Like, I think that he checks all the boxes for them with the playmaking. He can score a lot of dirty goals. He can be like a menace along the boards. He dropped the mitt several times this year in the O2, right? Like, I'm pretty sure he took on Kayshawn at least once, and he fought Misa. He's got some jam to his game. He's not afraid out there. So when I say the lights aren't always on, it's just that sometimes we see him give up the ghost a little bit on the back check, or have a full game where it's just like he's out there for a skate. He still might end up with 1+2 at the end of that game when he was playing for Brampton, just because he is that skilled, right? But you leave a little frustrated watching him, and he won't get away with that at the NHL level. But no, I think that the skill level is absolutely high enough. And in this spot, I think it makes so much sense. It makes more sense than taking James Hagens. It makes more sense than taking a Frundell. Maybe they get a little creative here and they look at like a Jake O'Brien, or they get wild and something like that, and they go on pure upside and skill. But again, a little bit lighter, that a kid like O'Brien is. I really think it makes a lot of sense for them if they're going upside and physical profile to match what they're needing.
Yep. No, I think as far as Chicago fans are concerned, it seems like that Martone is the people's choice at this point, based on what I've heard from the way that my mock draft went. Yeah. So, but that does create an interesting dynamic here now at number 4. And I really think that the Utah Mammoth, and it's going to take I called them hockey club a few times, but the Utah Mammoth, Sick Unis, they are picking at number 4. And Bill Armstrong had, outside of Ken Morrow's just exuberance of winning the lottery for the New York Islanders, the Miracle Man, they would not have won that if Ken Morrow wasn't there. I'm fully convinced of that. Bill Armstrong just could not contain it. He was all about it. And, I think they know that they're in a position already where they're doing really well. So with the Utah Mammoth pick, this is where I think things could get very, very interesting. They want to get they put an emphasis on size, not including Tisha Ginla last year,
who's a beauty.
But there has been an emphasis on size, and with that, we're going to go a little bit wild card here, because I do think that this is a player that if he hits, it's going to be a big one. So I'm going with your guy. I know you like this guy. 6'5", closing in on 6'6". Let's talk about our pal Roger McQueen, another
Big
player
Raj.
with an injury history. The upside situation is off the charts. However, we're dealing with another small sample size. We're dealing with a player that didn't play a lot this year, and I want to make this with a humongous caveat. This is going to be contingent upon a clean bill of health or close to it, or at least real good medical analysis at the combine about how he is health-wise, what the injuries are, what the potential for long-term is. Because I think a lot of people in Columbus are still nervous about Caden Lindstrom, picking him 4th overall, and he didn't play a game this year. Now, he is coming back. It sounds like he's going to play in the WHL final, maybe. Hopefully. And that then we'll get a better idea. But there's a lot of risk in taking those big players if there has been a back injury. And that is the one where people are going to get scared off a little bit. So we're going to see exactly what happens. But for Utah, for a team that has Clayton Keller and Logan Cooley as two of their top forwards, Dylan Gunther, who's not exactly, he's tall, but he's not thick. These are the guys that you want to surround them with. They've got Daniel Boot. They've got Dmitry Simashev on the back end. They got Sergachev on the back end. They've got all these other players. And they want to get bigger. And I understand that. And I think that to play in the division that they're in, they need to have guys like a Roger McQueen who's going to give you the bit of the power dynamic. a guy who I think, so I don't always love his skating, but it doesn't bother me. He's at that size. I think he's fine. I think there's a tremendous amount of skill there. There's a good compete level there. He'll check a lot of those boxes. And with Utah being in the position that they're in, when you move up to fourth, you get a little bit more, you have all these different options. And do I think that, Desnoyers could be an option for them? Sure. Do I think that some of these other, Anton Frendel, maybe, I think there are a lot of different players, but to me, you swing for the fences, and Bill Armstrong isn't afraid to do that. I think they'll go with Roger McQueen to continue on that size quotient.
I love the swing. I will be surprised if it is Big Raj at that spot. That would surprise me. But again, it's draft day, so anything is possible. But yeah. I think talking with some teams, everybody recognizes it's the same story I get when I ask about McQueen, is that they're like, are we talking about pure upside, or are we talking about sticking our neck out on a draft pick? Because it's very easy for you or I to be like, yeah, Roger McQueen has his pure upside is, top 3 in the class, probably, right? Maybe top 2. Mm-hmm. But he's an October birth date, so he's 18 already. He's not Matthew Schaefer. He doesn't have an extra 10 months to develop. The injury, right? He came out of the gates just guns blazing this year, and it was like, oh my goodness. But then if you actually look at the production, he did come back and then he got hurt again.
Yep.
If you look at the production, he was feasting on some weaker clubs, right? Against some of the better clubs in the West, he was putting up a point a game, or maybe even slightly under that too. So I'm just wondering if they're going to look at that and be like, yes, the pure upside on this kid, if everything was even, take him at 3, take him at 4, no problem. But I actually think this kid's he stinks of slider to me. It's wafting off of him. Wafting off. I mentioned this on a different show. I had an article. Is that a team picking outside the top 10 told me if McQueen slides to us, he's sliding right past us too. Because number one, we're not willing to take that risk, but also we'll be like, clearly the teams in front of us know something even more than we do. And so we're just going to let him slide right on by. So I think there's a world this guy gets to 12, 14, 15, not even out of the question. But hey, in this one, he's going 4. And Utah, I mean, like you said, they do have, Danilo Boot, and they do have Simishev. They got some big boys coming, and he's another one. And that would be a lot of fun to link him and Tej up or something like that long term as your second wave behind the Cooley, Gunther, Keller. That would be a lot of fun. That would be pretty deadly for Utah.
Yeah. So and like I said, I think that there is going to have to be, if he's going to go high, there's going to have to be the most pristine medical records, because a lot of people got sucked into the Caden Lindstrom's fine at the combine last year, and he wasn't. And I think in the world where Caden Lindstrom exists and that happened, that was really bad timing for Roger McQueen. So in terms of how high he's going to go. So I think everything you said, I absolutely take at face value and agree with. And I said, you know what, of the teams that are in that range, who is most positioned for the swing? And I do feel like Utah is positioned for the swing, but we'll see how that goes. And again, there's a lot of different things. I could also see, Desnoyers being in the mix there. I could see a couple of those guys that have some of the traits that they want. And they're bigger than what they have. So, that also helps too. All right. So we went a little bit long on the top 4. We're going to go a little bit quicker through these next several picks, because we want to get through this. And I think that after Utah, which I do feel is going to continue to be a wild card, whether they pick McQueen or someone else, we're going right through it. And so, Cam, you are now on the clock. The Nashville Predators, after just a putrid season, are number 5 on the list, and they have a chance to improve their team and their prospect system pretty quickly here. Who are they taking, my friend?
As the slide continues, they're going Caleb Desnoyers out of the queue, out of the Moncton Wildcats. This kid, the youngest player on the best team in the queue, led him in points. He's leading the queue in playoffs right now. I think he's at like 24, 25 in like a dozen games. 6'2", left-handed center. He's cerebral, right? The IQ off the charts. Playmaker, great puck handling. Doesn't play with incredible pace, but the skating is still good. But he doesn't push the envelope. I'll reference this to some players. He does exactly what he needs to do to produce at the level he's at. And every now and again, I'd like him to just bust it wide open and just go full tits all the time and show us that he can do what he's going to need to do at the NHL. But he has got such incredible tools, and he's got that toolkit too, right? That brain is big and it's powerful. And like I said, 6'2", only like 170, 175 pounds. So he's got lots of room to fill out too. He's going to Nashville. They need, they kind of blew their load on all those UFAs last year. And so they need the more high octane offense coming up, some more high skilled players. And unfortunately, James Hagens, supposed to be number 1. All of a sudden we're at pick 5 and he's not gone yet. But we're going Caleb Desnoyers to Nashville.
Yep. And I mean, I think that's the thing. If James Hagens doesn't go to the Islanders, I do think that there's a potential for a bigger slide. Because of that. And I think Caleb Desnoyers is a tremendous organizational fit for Nashville. I think that there's a role for him in the near future. I think he's a number 2 center, like a perfect, like the perfect number 2 center for your team. With what he does and the versatility that he brings, the energy that he brings. I love that, that motor. He's the kind of guy that's going to drag you into the fight, and he's going to go get pucks and do everything you need him to do. So I like that pick. And so that brings us to the Philadelphia Flyers. And again, this is a tricky spot here because I think there's a number of guys that you could kind of circle around and say, but I think that there is a desire for center in the organization. I think there is a need for center in the organization. And I do think that the slide will continue once again. I think this is a spot where James Hagens could potentially go, but I am going with your favorite, Anton Frundell. So here's the situation with Frundell. Here's the situation with Frundell, because he did not have a good U18s. Every general manager picking in this range was at the under-18 World Championship, except for the Islanders because they didn't have one. And so, Danny Briere was at this. Keith Jones was at this event. Everybody saw him. If that was the only hockey that you saw him play all year, not a guy that you're probably taking in the top 10. However, let's also talk about, Cam, the numbers of Frundell, especially when it comes to the Allsvenskan and the production that he had in the Allsvenskan this year. In terms of a point per game rate, higher than anybody at the U18 as a U18 in that league on points per game, higher than Willie Nylander, higher than David Pastrnak, all these guys are the same age. That being what it is. Frundell has size. He's thick. He when he's on, he's on. When he's not, as we saw at the under 18s, pretty quiet. Didn't play as much down the stretch as Djurgården got into the SHL with promotion. So he didn't play as many minutes in the biggest games, but he did have production during the playoffs in the earlier rounds. I have heard repeatedly that there is a groundswell, at least within the European scouting community, and this is not universal, but there is a lot of people that believe a lot in the player still. I do think this is a pick that has a fair amount of risk that goes with it, but I do like it in terms of where the Flyers are, what they're looking for, what they need, what's already off the board. To me, Frundell is the risk that they would take at that stage, and I am certain you will disagree with me.
Somewhere WJC rankings is partying through the roof right now. That whoever has that Twitter account, maybe it's Anton, maybe it's Papa Frundell. It might be Anton. He loves them so much, and I think he's a Flyers fan. So this is music to his ears right now. Who's better, Anton Frundell or Jet Luchenko? Because didn't they just take a middle six center in the first round last year and passed on Zeev Buium? And are they're gonna do that again?
Well,
They're
that's
gonna
the
leave,
thing.
They're gonna leave juice on the board and take a middle six center.
That's the thing. Like there
That's
are
the thing.
people that believe Frendell has more than that in him, and I think that they're, like
I
you look
guess
at like even like what was it? Was it McKenzie's list that had him like third or fourth?
Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah, I mean, like so there's clearly, and again, like this isn't our ranking, right? This isn't our
No.
This is kind of our guess, and I would say, yeah, I mean, like, between him and Luchenko, I think there's more offensive upside in Frendell than there is in Luchenko, but at the same time, it's I mean, you and I have seen him. We've seen him a lot, and I've seen him when I thought he was going to be the next big thing, and then also have seen him when I didn't love him. But like in terms of like NHL equivalencies and everything else, like if you want to read into that, which I know you and I were like, okay, that's kind of fine, but whatever. It's not gonna change things. But his is the highest of the draft class, I think, outside of
well, he played pro hockey. He played pro hockey, right? And now I'm gonna poke a couple holes in the statistical analysis of him just before, and then I'm gonna give him a little bit of love. Then I'm gonna give him a little bit of love. That make that sandwich. Yes, top U18 scorer in Hockey Allsvenskan. Awesome, right? You watch those games. I watched a great number of them. Victor Eklund was consistently the better player, playing usually often on a line with him. Also, when we're comparing him historically to U18 players, what did Djurgården do at the end of the year there, right before he jumped over to the U18s? They won promotion to the SHL. They were the best team in the Hockey Allsvenskan. So not every 17-year-old player gets to play on the best team in the league. And that the best team in the league often scores a lot of goals. Okay. And we saw as the games got tough, his minutes, his role decreased significantly to the point where he was playing, sub 3 minutes a night in the playoffs. So he wasn't this guy who was, 0.8 points per game in the regular season, then continued in that role, so some of those points might have been a little greasy. Now to pump him up a little bit, just a lovely human being, right? Just a polite and thoughtful, and I like him. And I've heard his family is the same way. Someone actually said to me, they are so nice. You think that maybe they're hiding something. And I'm like, maybe they're secret vampires or something, because they are just apparently just lovable people. So I am rooting for the kid, despite, I end up doing this to a player or two every year, is that I feel like they're way overvalued. And then I have to rail against the tide, even though I like them. If we're talking about the 12th overall pick or the 14th overall pick, I'm like, hell yeah, Anton Lundell. I keep calling him Lundell. Frendell, get him in there. I keep calling him Anton Lundell because that's
Anton
who I think
Lundell,
he's going to be.
He'd probably go higher. Yeah.
I guess Lundell, maybe.
Yeah, in this draft
but that's
class,
the type of player
higher.
I think he's going to be. He would, but that's what I think he's going to be. He's a little less defensive and he's got a better shot. I think he's going to be a good middle six center. Maybe he's a second line center. Maybe he's a second line center. Maybe he's a winger. Maybe he's a second line winger who can really cannonball on the power play. But yes, that's fine. We're giving him to Philly. I think you're right. I think it does fit the Flyers, what they're looking for, how they've drafted at 6. I'm not surprised at all. If this is how it breaks out, not surprised.
Yeah, we'll see. And if any of those guys are not there that they want, I think that's also another trade. It could be a potential trade down situation for them, unless there's something on the board that they're enamored with. So we'll see. All right, we'll hasten the pace here as we get up to 7, and the Boston Bruins picking 7th overall. Just strange to see them this high in the draft order, but that's where they're at. Cam, who you got for the Bruins?
You ready for this?
I can't wait.
Second D-man off the board. Radim Mertka's going to Boston. They're taking the big man. Again, would not be my pick, but I'm picking for the Bruins right now. And they're looking and they are putting some meat on that blue line. They're like nuts to add in some high skill up front. We're going meat on the blue line because that's what we do in Boston. They went with Dean Letourneau. They went giant up front last year. He almost got 2 points in the NCAA. Maybe this year he'll double that. They're going Radim Mertka, and it's the stopping potential is massive with this kid, right? 6'6". He can skate pretty well. He's got a good stick. Not a bruiser, but he's a big, big boy. And hopefully another one of these guys that you can maybe light a little bit of fire and be like, you know that you're bigger than everybody, right? Like you can just go inflict your own will. And he has some offensive upside. When he showed up in Seattle, it changed their team. It changed their blue line. He could play 30 minutes a night, and he did everything for them. Wasn't great at the U18s. Didn't really change my assessment of him. He is what he is. There's a little bit of a project in there, but I do strongly believe that he will be the second defender off the board. And in this world, he's going 7 to Boston.
I think, yeah, I mean, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think if you're the Seattle Kraken sitting there at 8, which I'll have the next pick for, you're like, oh man, another of the top tier defensemen. I do think that Murka has a great chance to be the number 2 defenseman off the board. This is a strange draft in that, the defense group is pretty weak after Schaefer, but Murka is a guy with that upside. So it makes a ton of sense to me, Cam, that would be a place that Boston looks to. You've got Charlie McAvoy back there. You've got, guys but like, Mason Lohrei and others that are going to be, players for you, but this is a kind of guy that could potentially be a long-term top 4. They do need him to get more aggressive. We've talked about that, with him. He needs to be a higher compete player at his size. But there's so much to like about where his game can go, his athletic profile and things like that. So I think it's a very fair pick, but it does make things challenging for the Seattle Kraken, who are next on the list. And the Kraken decided not to take a defenseman in this same area last year. They decided they don't have a lot in terms of D prospects in their system. And unfortunately for them, I don't think this is a good spot to take a defenseman. In this year's draft, last year's was, this year's not. I love Berkeley Catton. I think he's going to be a great player for them. But now the theme, this is where the slide stops, my friend. This is where the slide stops. They have Matt. They've drafted a lot of centers. Matty Beniers. You've got Shane Wright. You've got Shane Wright. You've got whoever Catton, whatever you want. You can put all these guys in there. This is where James Hagens goes. James Hagens, I think, at number 8, it is very difficult to get this level of offensive upside in a player. I think that this is one of those. How they love the numbers in Seattle. Jason Botterill is now the GM, pretty much the same, otherwise same staff. They have not shied away from taking the smaller players. They need to start scoring goals. This team really struggles offensively. This is just the way the board goes for them, because I don't think I could stomach taking Jackson Smith or one of the other defensemen, like Kayshawn Aitchison, maybe, but it's like, I don't think I could take those players in this range. And yes, there are other guys like Brady Martin that's going to give you more size. There's going to be other guys that could potentially give you something else. James Hagens gives you the best playmaker available at this range, and I think you have to take him here. And I think Seattle would take him if this is how the board goes. So I'm going James Hagens to Seattle at 8.
I like it. Yeah, it had to happen. We had to get James in here. But he could fall. He could get there. He could get to 8 on draft day.
No question.
And you're right. And I think Seattle would probably look at it and be like, dang, we have players that fit this profile already, but quite clearly the best player on the board, right? And you make your changes down the road when you need to.
Yep. It's crazy, man. Like, this is just the way it's going to go, and I think Seattle's going to have to make some changes on the blue line. So we'll see where it all goes after that. Cam, you're on the clock now for the Buffalo Sabres, and hey, would you imagine that the Buffalo Sabres are picking in the top 10 again? So what do they take here? Yeah, it's crazy.
So they have consistently drafted smaller or slighter skilled forwards. So of course they're going to do that again. Just kidding. They're going Brady Martin. They are taking the hardest hitting kid in junior. And according to one NHL scout, would be one of the best hitters in the NHL today. God, that kid hits hard. Good wheels, a little frenetic. We saw it at the U18s, especially too, where he was trying to run things a little bit more. He was, but he can handle it too. He can pull the puck back through his legs. He can control it. He has patience. He has speed. He hits like a truck. I like his shot. I think the shot is plus. And it fits what they're kind of doing in Buffalo, that they need to diversify a little bit, right? We've got the Zach Benson, the Yuri Kuliks. We've got Consta Hellenius. They've drafted a ton of these types of guys. They've drafted Savoy and Noah Usland, and they've kind of had a brand. They've had a type. They like blondes, and blondes are small, skilled forwards. This time they're getting a little bigger, and they're going Brady Martin at number 9.
Brady Martin.
Pretty
good pick. I mean, and I think that does give. I think he's like an identity player, right? Like he gives you that kind of. He gives you that kind of like, hey, some snarl. And I think if you're the Anaheim Ducks, you're disappointed. You're sitting there at number 10. You're like, hey, this is a guy that kind of fits into what we're doing here. And now he's gone. So what are you gonna do? I think you mentioned him earlier. He made a cameo earlier in our conversation, and so with the 10th overall pick, the Anaheim Ducks are proud to select Victor Eklund, the playmaking forward. Now, the Ducks are kind of in a very interesting place here in their development. I think that they've got a lot of forwards. They've got a lot of guys that can play on the wing. They've got some players that they are hoping to transition into centers, but they also have this decor that has a lot of skill as well. I don't think there's anybody that they're going to be able to add in this draft that is going to significantly improve their blue line. Now, I could see a Kayshawn Aitchison potentially coming in here as that more hard-hitting defenseman that could, I think that's an absolute possibility. But I think Victor Eklund is a high-value player. I think he would have also been an option for Seattle when we took James Hagens. But I think Victor Eklund as a winger, as a guy that is going to potentially help you score goals, as a guy that has a high motor and can compete, I think Victor Eklund will be the pick for the Anaheim Ducks.
Yeah, I love it. He's 6 on my board. I love that player. I think he's going to be, for people at home, think Seth Jarvis. Seth Jarvis. That's the type of player I envision. Maybe not I think Seth Jarvis is going to land himself on some Selke boards here in the coming years as finalists. So maybe not as quite as defensively responsible as Seth Jarvis, but yeah, that's the type of player. So I like that. I like that for Anaheim. I get to pick for Pittsburgh.
Yeah, you know what?
And now, does Pittsburgh get to go back to back? Are the Rangers giving them up the next pick too?
That's a great point.
Right? That'll be fun.
The Rangers have the option to give them the pick.
I think they do too.
And I don't know what the timing I don't know what the stipulation is on the timing of when they have to make that. Is it even
I think it's 48 hours
draft? 48 hours.
48 hours. It might be 24, but whatever it is, it's a full 24 or 48. I tweeted it a while ago. I can't remember if it was 1 or 2 days.
Yeah, and if I'm the Rangers, I'm taking that down to the wire. I'm trying to basically see, okay, what kind of intel can we gather about how the rest of this is going to go? Is there something available to us in this range that we can get and be happy about? Or do we just cut our losses and go next year? And the question is, how high is that pick going to be next year? It's if I'm not mistaken, it's unprotected next year, right? It's
unprotected. 2026 unprotected, lots of value.
Yeah, so I probably am not allowing. I may just say, all right, go ahead, take this pick, Pittsburgh. Go ahead and take it. But we'll see where that goes. But before we get to that, we got to make Pittsburgh's pick at number 11. Cam, that's all up to you, my friend. So I know giving them back to back. So and we can decide. Yeah. We can decide. We don't have 48 hours anymore, so we can decide if we want to give the next pick to the Pittsburgh Penguins as well.
We could. When was the last time we had a guy go back to? I was trying to think about that. 2015, obviously Boston ran 3 straight, but the Isles, right? Wallstrom and Dobson. Is that the last time we saw a team go back to back, especially at this range, right? First round, early first round. Yeah, Pittsburgh could use that too. No first rounder last year. Jaeger the year before that, I guess. Okay, so Pittsburgh, they need everything. Let's not sugarcoat it here. I am a big Owen Pickering guy, but he's not going to be a cornerstone for you. It would change my mind a little bit if I knew I was going back to back if I was Pittsburgh, because then I would just go forward D forward. Let's mix it up a little bit. But they're going with the fan favorite, and we think has got a lot of helium. Talking to teams, they like this kid a lot. Kayshawn, come on down. He's got that smirk. He's got that gunslinger attitude. He is going to knock some guys through the end wall in open ice, drop the mitts, score some goals. Keyshawn Aitchison, he's going to Pittsburgh.
I like it. I think Keyshawn Aitchison is such a fascinating player, a goal scorer from the back end. He is drilling pucks this year. He is absolutely, he hits hard, he scores, he's out there just being a menace, and I think Pittsburgh could use a little bit of that. And it's also like, teams like Boston in that range, if they could potentially, like we talked about it not that long ago, that Aitchison very well could be the second defenseman off the board. It's not out of the realm of possibility. So in this mock draft, Cam, I think we just got to say to the old New York Rangers, go ahead and dish that pick over.
They're moving
go over.
They got
Pittsburgh,
it. They got it. They didn't trade for JT Miller to be bad next year. They might inevitably be bad next year, but you got to think. You got to think they have to bet on themselves. Like, what kind of message are you sending to the team? If you're like, guys, we're gonna keep that pick right now, and we're gonna assume we suck next year so that we get that. No, you're gonna give it up. It's gonna be fine.
Yep. So here we go, Pittsburgh. This is what so now Pittsburgh has it. You've got Keyshawn Aitchison. You're feeling good about it. You're loving where you're at. You gotta have something there. You gotta find the right kind of guy. And the thing is this does get trickier. It gets a lot trickier for me in terms of what is available and what I think makes sense for them. So as we noted, we did not share these with each other before the show. So
we did not.
I'm taking my timeout.
Oh, here we go.
We also changed the team. So that's going to make things a little bit interesting here. So let me think about it a little bit. Talk amongst yourselves. I'm going to keep talking because that's how I do things, in terms
of you process.
That's how I process things. And I think I can't believe I feel like we may have forgotten him. And I feel like he's not going to go this low.
Who'd you get? Who did we forget?
Jake O'Brien. Oh,
we forgot Jake.
We didn't put Jake on. So,
oh my goodness.
Jake O'Brien, by virtue of insanity,
give him to Pittsburgh. Give him to Pittsburgh. It's easy. I would have taken him at 11. This is great.
Yeah,
this is great. This is fine.
Jake O'Brien is a major riser. I feel embarrassed now.
I don't. I think this is totally fine, Chris. If you look at the board, like maybe he would have gone to Seattle instead of Hagens. Maybe, right? Maybe.
Right.
But I think Buffalo, I still think they take Brady Martin in that spot. I think Anaheim, they got loads of centers. Yeah. They've got all the centers, right? They just, they get Eklund with a little bit of spice. And now Pittsburgh, he would have gone 11. He would have been the first pick to Pittsburgh over Aitchison.
Yeah.
But now they're going back to back, so it's fine.
It's fine. You got back to backs, Jake O'Brien. So Jake,
I love it.
Jake, sorry. But like the thing, he is so just to at least talk about Jake O'Brien. He has been a draft riser. He chose not to go to the under 18 Worlds. I don't think that anybody really held that against him in terms of, is it going to hurt his draft stock or anything? He had been through a long playoffs. He was a little banged up and he was healthy enough to play, but he didn't play, and that's fine. For him, he's a high end scorer. He's a guy that a lot of teams really do like. I think that he could really go anywhere from, probably even 4 to this range to 12. I mean, just because we don't know, there's not a lot of consensus. So I think that he would be an option for Utah. He'd be an option for a lot of teams. The way our board shook out, he ended up 12th to the Pittsburgh Penguins, and Jake O'Brien is now there. So and quite frankly, like, as much as we would like to think there's consensus, there isn't. And like you said, anything can happen on draft day. So Jake O'Brien goes to 12 at Pittsburgh. So Cam, that puts you on the clock for the Detroit Red Wings, my friend. And the Red Wings always seem to be picking right in this range. Always.
Yeah, and they pick the exact same player. So who is that exact same player at this spot? Hey, where's Marco Kasper? Hey, where is he? Where's this year's Marco Kasper? Oh, I see him. I found him. No, but we're going on the wing. We're going with a goal scorer. We're going with a big boy, Lyndon Lakovic. Okay, We're going, and I thought maybe for Pittsburgh because they got Bryn Yeager, they played together. He led the scoring in Moose Jaw this year. Yeah, we're going Linden. Great name. He's heading to Detroit.
Yeah,
he's going to be a goal scorer for him and add some size.
Yeah, they needed size. They need some scoring. He's got pretty good skill for a bigger fella. He's got the ability to get that shot off. He's got power dynamic to him. I think that's helpful. They have Michael Brandsegg-Nygaard. They have Nate Danielson. They have, like you said, Marco Kasper. They have had guys that, like compete, drive. Those are all things that are important to them. Physicality is important to them. I think that Lakovic gives you a real opportunity to continue to build on that. And when you're picking in this range that they are always picking in now, you can't get a super dynamic offensive talent that I think everybody wants them to get. You got to get up higher in the draft to do that. Lakovic is a good pick in this range. I think it's a very fair range for him to go in. And then that is ultimately where he lands with the Detroit Red Wings, which then brings us to the Columbus Blue Jackets. Just narrowly missed out on the playoffs. And unfortunately, they find themselves in a position here that they would possibly rather not be in to be drafting this high. They'd rather be in the playoffs. Now, let's think about this for a second, Cam.
Okay.
They drafted a player that was very injured last year.
Yes, they did.
Took the risk. I think they're going to do it again. And not because of Carter Bear's going. So nice. I think this is a team that needs to have scoring. Carter Bear, suffered an injury in the season. I don't think it's anything that's going to impact him long term. It's not anything where there's like going to be this lingering kind of situation here. Carter Bear, I've got him going to the Columbus Blue Jackets. He brings scoring, 40 goals in 56 games. There's a little bit more of that dynamic element. I don't think like he doesn't, I wouldn't have picked him for Detroit either. I think he doesn't fit their kind of mold, but I do think that what he brings to Columbus is something that they need to continue building on. They have skill. They've got guys like Fantilli and Johnson and others and some of these other guys coming, but I really want to see Carter Bear and what his goal scoring capability could do on the wing for the Columbus Blue Jackets. So that's where we're going for that pick.
I like it. It's either that or, they're going to trade that and their other first round pick and really go for broke. I could see Donnie Waddell making some waves. I think he's the man to watch on draft day with those 2 first rounders. So we'll just throw that out there too. Okay. So I get Vancouver. I get to pick for Vancouver.
You do. Yeah, I don't know how we work this out for you.
Jeez Louise.
It's just, I knew I wanted to give you the first pick, and the added bonus was that you get to pick for the hometown Canucks.
So there's obviously they're picking a Swede. So that's like number 1. So is it Milton Gastrin? No, they can't do that. They do love picking their Swedes though. No. Right? I think they do. I think we've got another slider. And it's time to hear his name. And it's Jackson Smith. We're finally getting Jackson Smith his due. 6'3". He has flashed like some tremendous stuff this year, right? In the Western Hockey League, some of the things he did out there with his skating, opening up the hips, beating guys, holding pucks on at the blue line, shifty shots, didn't rip it up production-wise, but still strong. U18s were a little soft, a little wet behind the ears, it looked like, but he still had good moments. And again, another one who has like really strong stopping potential. Great physical tools, excellent physical tools. Maybe the IQ just isn't super high, but I think you're taking Jackson Smith with his size, with his skating, with his physical tools. You are looking at like, this is a pretty safe bet to play on the second pair. And for Vancouver, adding more defensemen is never going to hurt what they're doing there too. So we're giving them Jackson Smith.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair pick. I think that's a good range for Jackson Smith to go in. I do think that he slipped a little bit in the eyes of some of the scouts in the latter stages of the season, and certainly at the under 18 Worlds. And so that does give you the opportunity. It's there's plenty for him to work on, but he also has a great athletic toolkit. He's got the skill. He's got the size, like all those different things. There's so much to like about him. I think we need to see improvement in the hockey sense department and just executing plays a little bit better and at pace. So that's one thing. All right. So I'm going to close this out. Montreal Canadiens via the Calgary Flames get this pick. And
you got to lay up.
Every mock draft. every mock draft you ever see for them is typically going to have a QMJHL player. They have not picked a QMJHL player in a long time. Like I think Nathan Beaulieu was the last QMJHL player they took in the first round. But the streak ends. It dies. The streak of no QMJHL players dies today at this draft. Justin Carbonneau of the Blainville Boisbriand Armada is going to the Canadiens. It's not because he's in the queue. It's because he's a big guy that can score. He is strong. He is a lot of things that they could probably use. You know, you got some size with Slavkovsky on the wing, but you have to continue to round out that group. Demidov's not huge, but he's strong. Nick Suzuki's not huge, but he's good at 2A. Cole Caulfield is Cole Caulfield. You know, but I do think that Carbonneau makes sense in this range. And Cam, you may disagree. I think that there's a lot to like about him in just how he operates. And to me, I'd love to hear if there are any things on your end that you're just not sure about with him. I just think in this range of the draft, once we get past, you know, really Carter Bear, I start feeling like, oh man, this could go any which way. And I don't really love where we're at, you know, like there's nobody that jumps out at me that just is like, I got to have this player. But give me Justin Carbonneau, right winger, 89 points in 62 games, 46 goals scored, 61 PIMs. Not that matters. Any closing
there's
thoughts
anything
on
wrong
the
with
Habs? There's anything wrong with that.
No, there's anything wrong with
that. So the thing is that, you know, mock drafts, when you put the Q, I always hear, oh, you're just putting them there. I promise this is merely coincidence. I didn't do it on
purpose. Not for me. It's not for me. I actually left him for you with that Vancouver pick. I think he's a pick that Vancouver would be like, yeah, we'll take this kid. They might have taken him, but I was like, nope, I got to leave the French kid for the French team because it makes too much sense. P.S. How good is Montreal looking in a few years here? Even like right now, right? Like what a great setup they have coming. You just rattled off all those names. They're all young. They're all young and super skilled.
Yep.
And they got Fowler coming up in goal. You know, we didn't even mention Reinbacher, who they jumped on too early, but still, you know, with the knee injury, there's still potential there. They've got all sorts of good stuff coming. I'm jealous.
They do. That's
good.
Laval,
that's good looking.
Yeah, the Laval Rocket are really one of they were the best team in the regular season this year. Jacob Fowler is 3-0 in his first 3 Calder Cup playoff starts. The only game they've lost in the postseason. The only game they lost in the postseason was the one that Caden Primo played, who had been their goalie all year long. And they go ahead and they put Fowler back in and he wins them the next game. So things are happening in Montreal, and that's an opportunity where you get to bring in another player that I think will help you and fits within what you're building. So Justin Carbonneau is the last of the 16 picks. Now, we got a long way to go. The Stanley Cup playoffs are ongoing. There's a lot of time between now and the NHL draft. We will do more mock drafts on this show. We will do the guys that we would pick if we were in the position of the team. We will do, you know, our final mock draft later when we get closer to the draft and try to get as close as we can to what we think is going to happen. And maybe we collab instead of going back and forth. But there's a lot of different things that are coming up here, Cam. Let's tell the people what they can expect from you guys over at Elite Prospects, because folks, this is our time to shine on Called Up the Prospects podcast and at FloHockey, at Elite Prospects. This is our moment. We are here for you. We cannot wait to share with you. Cam, what do you guys got cooking up over there at EP?
This is the silly season. We just dropped our WHL rankings. We're getting into that world there too. And the WHL draft was last night. That was fun. Personally, I've got this scout and executive poll. So when we were in Texas there, I was picking brains, getting all these questions answered. Some guys were, giving lots. Some guys were giving a little bit, but I've got that. I'm really excited to write that piece. I got some stuff on Jimmy Hagens. I got a nice piece about James Hagens coming out too. So we're going to be, all our film rooms are going to start really cooking at Justin Carbonneau one. Our guy Hattie, he put out a great one on Carbo there, which I think Montreal fans, if he lands there, you're going to be really pleased with this kid. Great handles, but he also plays a hard skill game too. So all our film rooms are going to be coming out. We've got, the combine in a couple weeks, Chris, that we're going to. Apparently we're going to be eating some tasty chicken wings there in Buffalo. It's good stuff, man. This is the good stuff.
Yeah, this is a lot of fun. And for us over at FloHockey, it's not just the NHL draft. We are getting ready. The USHL Clark Cup finals begin on Friday. That is featuring the Waterloo Blackhawks and the Muskegon Lumberjacks. There are a number of high-end draft prospects there, including a name to know for 2026, Tynan Lawrence, leading the USHL Clark Cup playoffs in scoring as an underager. He is playing for the Muskegon Lumberjacks. You've got Brendan McMorrow, who has been outstanding. He's a re-entry for this year, playing for Waterloo, two of the very best teams in the USHL. That series starts Friday night, and that is a best of 5 series. On top of that, the Calder Cup playoffs and the Kelly Cup playoffs. Calder Cup in the AHL, Kelly Cup in the ECHL. We are getting closer and closer to the end of the season, yet we still have a long way to go. It's a marathon, not a sprint when we get to the playoffs. Make sure you are signed up for a FloHockey subscription to watch all of that stuff. On top of that, lots of NHL draft coverage coming your way, mock drafts, my final rankings, all the things that I've been promising for months and months. They will finally appear on our website, and I'm very excited to get that to you, because we are going to be at the Combine, we will be at the draft, we will be everywhere leading up to that. So make sure you stay tuned. Lots of fun things happening at FloHockey, and make sure that you get signed up for that. For those of you that listen to this podcast on audio platforms, make sure you are leaving ratings and reviews, whether it's on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to this show. Make sure you're doing it, because I didn't tell you this before the show, but I noticed Called Up the Prospects podcast is starting to rise up those little podcast charts that we tend to see every once in a while. And in order for us to keep moving up, and for us to be the prospects show of record for your ears and for your eyes, if you watch this, we need your kind ratings and reviews. That helps get us up those charts, because it's not just about downloads. It's not just about listens. It's about how people are engaging with the show. So this is my plea to you, my friends. And Cam, you also plead to our friends that we need your support. So please do leave those comments and rankings. We'll probably have to read a few on the show. I did read one once.
Hot stuff.
It was a little racy.
Yeah.
So let's make sure that those are acceptable. We will read those on the show. We've also got a lot more coming up. So next week, we're going to talk more NHL draft right here on Called Up the Prospects podcast. We are going to talk more about, what's happening, what we're hearing. Maybe the Islanders have a GM by then. Maybe there's a GM in Los Angeles to talk about. Maybe every team has their head coach in place. Not likely. There's lots more to talk about in the prospect world. Lots of things moving. Lots of NCAA recruiting and things of that nature. It's all happening, and we'll talk about all of it. So before we get out of here, I want to say a special thanks to Ever for producing today's show and for hanging with us through this long podcast where we are giving you the mock draft. Huge thanks to my co-host, Cam Robinson, who is bringing the heat and bringing the knowledge. Always enjoy that. And a special thanks to our pals at Wonderful Pistachios. Pistachios are known for their protein power, fiber, and better for you unsaturated fats, for a combination that may help keep you feeling fuller longer. Go out and get yourself some pistachios and tell them Called Up the Prospects podcast sent you. Although if you tell a checker at your local grocery store, they're probably going to say, "What's that? And why did you ask me about that?" However, they will know that you are being healthy, and you are trying to enjoy yourself with some wonderful pistachios. Cam and Chris approved. So Cam, man, this was fun, dude. Let's do this again in the near future. We're going to have some more mock drafts. This is always a fun way to do it. And yeah, we've been doing it for a long time with Dimitri. And Dimitri, we're not cheating on you. We'll still do it with you, I'm sure, at some point as well. It just will have to be a little bit different. But either way, we're going to have a lot of fun. So thanks for all of you for sticking with us this long. Hopefully you enjoyed the mock draft. And we cannot wait to hear your own picks for your favorite team in the not so distant future. I'm sure you'll leave them in the comments with how much you disagree with ours. That's going to do it for this week's episode of Called Up the Prospects podcast. For Cam Robinson, I am Chris Peters. We will see you next week.